Welcome to another edition of the Public Interest. My name is David Granger, and on this series of programs, we examine matters of interest to the Guyanese public, whether their members are at home or abroad in the diaspora. And today we're looking at something which is very serious. Every single week, about 3 persons die on the roads of Guyana, and we're concerned with about human life. And for this year already, we've had 122 road deaths, and it is a burden which Guyana can hardly afford to bear, because most of the people who die are very young. And we would like to look at the question of road deaths and see whether there is a way that all Guyanese, government, NGOs, police, the village councils, municipal councils, can work together to prevent children and young people from dying on our roads. That is the purpose of this program. As I said, 122 persons were killed on the roads of Guyana in the first 39 weeks of this year, from 1st of January to 1st of October. And it is an unbearable toll for Guyana to take. Traffic accidents, cause death, they cause damage, they cause disability, and of course financial loss. And some Guyanese should take a trip into the hospital, accident ward. And at one stage, I even came to the conclusion that perhaps, we should build a special accident hospital, just as the APNU AFC coalition constructed this infectious disease hospital on the East Coast. We need to have an accident hospital so that persons who get into these accidents could get proper care and rehabilitation. Guyana, according to the World Health Organization, is ranked 11th in America, for road deaths, and it is an unbearable burden for Guyanese to bear. And who are the most vulnerable? There's a saying, have you ever seen a car in a coffin? The truth is that the most vulnerable persons on the roads are pedestrians, they're cyclists, and they're motorcyclists. And most of them are between the ages of 20 and 35. These are young fathers, young mothers, in their most productive period of their lives. And in 2020, persons in this age group, these young persons, between the age of 20 and 35, were responsible for 80% of road deaths. And as I said, it is something which is difficult for families to bear, something which is difficult for the nation to bear. One of the reasons, of course, is that every year, about 10,000 new reconditioned vehicles, 10,000 additional vehicles come onto the roads of Guyana. And this places a severe strain on our road network, which was more or less unchanged from colonial times. The only rail highway we've ever constructed since independence is the one constructed by the PNC administration from Linden to Soesdijk. But most of the roads are just public roads that we were accustomed to in colonial times, which have just been resurfaced. And it is because of this large number of vehicles being added every year, and the fact that the road infrastructure is virtually unchanged, that we have such an increase in traffic accidents and deaths. The highest number of road deaths, was back in 2007 under the PPP administration, when 169 persons were killed on the roads. And we all remember the horrific accidents. The 2 most horrific accidents occurred at Linden in October 2007. 10 persons were killed. And again, on the current team, when about 12 persons were killed in a single accident. If that was a terrorist attack, it would qualify as a massacre. We all recall that an important civil organization called the Mothers in Black came into being, and every Friday the mothers would dress in black, because these were mothers who had lost their children, and they would demonstrate outside of the National Assembly. And eventually, they were able to get the PPP administration to start to make changes in legislation. That is when we started to see the enforced use of helmets, the enforced use of seatbelts, and the introduction of speed radars, excuse me, and breathalyzers. Unfortunately, as we learned from the news, sometimes the breathalyzers don't work. And when somebody's breath is tested for alcohol, that could be tested in the courts as well. Nevertheless, the Mothers in Black did have an impact on legislation and police enforcement. Excuse me, please. Why have there been so many fatal accidents in Guyana? There are several causes, and perhaps the most important one is driving without due care and attention and driving at excessive speed. And this happens, of course, when drivers fail to follow the rules which are laid down for speed limits. Very often, as we've seen in the news, many persons have been driving while under the influence of alcohol, driving when drunk. And about 70% of road deaths are caused by this, driving under the influence of liquor or driving at excessive speeds. We also have problems with persons who are driving with impaired vision. I mean, they should not be behind the wheel at all, but nobody tests them for that. And sometimes people drive unroadworthy vehicles, and readers may be surprised to see in the newspapers sudden blowout. Well, it means that there's a mechanical problem, and this has not been detected, or the police have not been able to take unsafe vehicles off the roads. Sometimes people are distracted by carrying on conversations on their mobile phones while trying to drive. They're holding the phone in one arm and they're trying to hold the steering wheel in another hand. And very frequently, too, children and unqualified people, not necessarily children, who are not licensed, they're not qualified, they're not trained, could be found behind the wheels of vehicles, and they have also been the cause of some deaths. So that is a very serious problem. Driving while drunk, or speeding, or just not being fit to drive at all. We have another problem in Guyana, that is driving on unsatisfactory or congested or encumbered roadways. Now, many of our so-called uh, public roads were really village roads. During colonial times, these roads ran through villages, and it was typical to see, people with tractors or combines coming onto the roads, people drying paddy at the side of the road, roadside markets, and people were never really accustomed to speeding vehicles along these roadways. They were just as if they were on some sort of back dam. And the result is that the mentality has remained the same, but the volume of vehicles and the speed at which vehicles have been traveling have changed. So we see that many of these roads have no sidewalks. So children going to school, mothers and other persons going to markets, people going about their daily business, have to walk onto the roadways. And sometimes there are piles of sand or builders' waste or improperly parked vehicles. So they have to actually walk onto the carriageway in order to go about their business, because that's how the village operated. But nowadays, these roads are no longer villages. These roads are regarded as major routes between regions, literally from region 2 to region 6. Some roads don't have clear pedestrian or zebra crossings. So it is difficult for persons, particularly the aged or the very young, to know where and when to cross the roads. And sometimes, people do not manage to get across successfully. They have to dodge the traffic, and many drivers don't pay attention to persons attempting to cross the road. They don't show courtesy to persons attempting to cross the road. But again, it's a failure of road engineering and police law enforcement not to have clearly marked pedestrian crossing. My friends, bear in mind the important thing about using roads is to make sure that road users are safe. And it is not to provide a speedway for motor vehicles, to make sure that ordinary persons can use the roads safely. Some of them don't have proper signs showing what the speed limits are. Some of them don't have proper lights. And as you know, in some areas, the cows or other farm vehicles would go on the roads to rest on the warm asphalt. And somebody speeding along the roadway, for example, on the quarantine, may just hit a cow and cause an accident. Not to the cow, usually to the driver of the vehicle. Um, and then there's some things about the new roundabouts where some people from are not accustomed to roundabouts, and they're not sure about the rules for using roundabouts, as we saw quite recently when a newly constructed roundabout was damaged by an errant driver. Um, and if you've ever gone through the country roads at during public holidays, particularly long weekends, sometimes cricket at a popular sports ground or sports stadium, at horse racing in Berbice, and other weekend activities, you'll see that it is very likely that people will be hit and sometimes fatally hit. And then, of course, as I said, persons who are building houses simply use the public roadways for storage. They store the sand, they store the steel, and they store other building materials on the public roadways. And of course, sometimes these obstacles and obstructions are seen by the police, but no action is taken. And even when they finish building the house, the builder's waste is dumped on the roadside, um, causing another problem. And then you have, as I said before, the vendors who encroach onto the roadways, and very frequently municipal councils and other district authorities have a difficulty in removing vendors who are obstructing the motorways. And this accounts for very many accidents because road users are forced into a very narrow channel along the roadways. So these are some of the problems. And then, of course, you have the fact that some vehicles do have priority. And we must ensure that when ambulances have to traverse those roads, that they are given priority. And then you have fire tenders. In addition to that, some vehicles are wider than the vehicles we were accustomed to maybe 50 or 60 years ago. People are now driving SUVs and Hummers. And when they try to negotiate some of the narrow roads, I mean, I don't want to criticize New Amsterdam, but some of the roads in New Amsterdam used to be quite narrow. I don't know if they've been widened. And in some other, housing schemes, the roads were not designed for modern vehicles. They were probably designed for bicycles or vehicles in the 1950s. But that is a problem. And then you have not only ambulances and fire tenders, but you have grey carts. And some people still use horse-drawn or animal-drawn carts. Some people use huge lorries, and those of you who traverse the banks of some roads will notice that They're huge lorries, probably carrying about 20 tons of sand or stone, some carrying timber. Um, and it, these things not only help to destroy the surface of the roads, but they shove other people out of the way. And there have been instances in which road users, pedestrians particularly, have been crushed to death by some of these trucks, garbage trucks and other vehicles. Then you have to consider what happens to people who are looking to use the roadways to exercise, joggers, or as happened some months ago, people go on the bicycles to exercise in the morning during the dark hours of the morning when some people are just going home, maybe a bit drowsy or drunk. There are no special lanes for joggers. There are no special lanes for cyclists. There are no special lanes for school children, some pavements for school children to get to school. And again, this has been the source of deaths. It's been the cause of deaths. Cyclists and joggers, again, as I said earlier, a few minutes ago, most of the deaths are of pedestrians and bicyclists and motorcyclists. Most of the road, the 80% of the road deaths. So when you're looking for joggers on public roads, and if you have relatives who jog on the public road, warn them um, about the danger about jogging on public roads, because some people speed, especially in the early hours during the hours of darkness. Then school children have to go to school at certain hours, and you can see them assembling at the side of the road. You can see them walking to school. Again, no pavements, no protection, and sometimes they're hit by persons. And of course, the vehicles in which they're traveling might stop on the one side of the road, and the school is on the other side of the road. And there you're begging the recipe for accidents. And regrettably, because of the failure of the state, of enforcement agencies, of public engineering, public works, public infrastructure, no provisions are made in some areas for pedestrians, and that is a fact. This is something that must be rectified. Very frequently, pedestrians have to compete for space with motorized vehicles, and too frequently, unfortunately, the motorized vehicles end up hurting them. Uh, so there are problems, and we have to rectify these problems. The problems haven't suddenly come upon us. The problems have been there, for decades. And now that we have the opportunity, we must make sure that the roads are safe and these problems are corrected and rectified, with the aim of ensuring that persons can use the roadways safely. Let us take a look at management of the traffic problem. Yes, we know we have a Guyana police force, and we know there's a traffic department. My friends, over the last 13 years, there have been 11 different traffic chiefs. It means that some of them are serving for less than a year. And the average length of service is probably about 15 months. Now, many of them just come from other divisions. They're not specially trained in traffic management. They come from other divisions and they do a stint. These are not professionally trained traffic managers. They just come and do a stint and then go somewhere else. The result is that, well, they may be rolling stones in the sense that they cannot bring the experience, the expertise to improving the quality of road management. It may be unfair, but in developed countries, or perhaps I can say maybe in other jurisdictions, uh, to become a traffic chief, an officer has to serve about 10 years in traffic duties in that department in order to qualify to be manager of a traffic department. You must be qualified in public safety. You must be qualified in traffic control. He's not just appointed there because he's the next senior officer available. In other words, I'm suggesting that the traffic chief must be a professional traffic manager, and he must know what to look for and how to make corrections to the problems facing traffic. The second question, or the second problem, apart from the administration department, is the fact that the police traffic department is under-equipped and under-trained. And it's time that we have a completely computerized police department, police traffic department, so that if someone commits an infraction in Region 6 or Region 2, it could easily be traced when he commits a similar infraction in Region 7, because it's surprisingly, you sometimes have road deaths in Region 7 Bartica, sometimes in Madia, sometimes in Lethem, in Region 7, 8, and 9. So it is not, road deaths are not just an urban phenomenon or a coastal phenomenon. In the least expected areas, you can have road deaths. And what we need is to have a traffic department which has comprehensive countrywide cover, so that a person doesn't commit an offense in one division or one region and simply goes on and starts driving in another division. The police traffic department has a staff of about 1,000, which is considerable. It's probably about 1/5 of the police force overall. But you have a lot of bureaucracy. You have people in administration, you have people in education and training, you have people in enforcement, you have records and registry. I don't have an insight into the inner workings of the police traffic department, but what I can say is that from this structure, quite a few members of the department are taken up with bureaucratic functions. Not that they're not important, but we need more boots on the road. We need more people looking at the hot spots where these accidents occur, West Coast Babis or West Demerara or Quarantine Coast. And we have to look at how traffic ranks are deployed. There is legislation, of course, and the legislation sometimes, does not give adequate protection to road users. And nobody knows for sure if errant drivers are taken off the streets permanently, or if they actually pay the fines, or if the fines are of such a nature that would dissuade them from ever driving vehicles again, or if they're suspended, for life. Nobody knows what happens when an accident occurs, and I suspect that from time to time, persons who are actually culpable in fatal accidents may appear behind the wheels again, maybe a couple of months or a couple of years later. What is certainly lacking is that some people are in need of education, and particularly in the police department, there must be specialized training in accident prevention, not just inspection of vehicles, not just certification of vehicles. And it's a waste of time using trained policemen to certify vehicles. That can be done by any corporate agency that is qualified. But police must be able to prevent, they must be able to investigate, and they must be able to prosecute drivers who commit these infractions. Certifying and licensing are not necessarily police functions. They can be done by a civil agency. And this has been one of the findings of the Discipline Forces Commission several years ago, that policemen need to be involved in enforcement on the street. And these duties like inspections and other clerical functions could be conducted by, or performed by civilians. Now, this is not to say that police have not made several pronouncements about campaigns to stamp out, uh, you know, the scourge of road killings, of road deaths. The police force has launched and relaunched several unsuccessful road safety operations. And cynical observers would yawn when they hear about another enforcement operation. It's really a question of a series of yawns. We heard about Operation Safeway. Every time you hear about Operation Safeway, it's been done before. There's been an Operation Safeway in 2008, an Operation Safeway in 2016. And every commissioner seems to take pride in launching an operation and announcing there'll be zero tolerance. The fact is that Operation Safeway actually saw an increase in fatal accidents. And then there was Operation White Knight in 2016. Some of you may not even remember that. Operation White Knight. And then there's Operation Road Order since 2013, 20 years ago. Operation Road Order. And then in 2019 and 2022, we had Operation Safe Road. So there's no shortage of operations. And when Safe Road was launched, we had about 100 road deaths. And right now, we are in another operation, Operation Respect the Road. This was launched this year. And in the first 2 months of that operation, the current operation, I would call it, we've already had 20 deaths. So please don't be fooled by the announcement of another operation. What we need are not names and labels. What we need is actual enforcement on the ground, and we have not been seeing that. What are we to do about the large number of road deaths? 3 road deaths every week. 12 Guyanese are dying every month. What are we going to do about it? My concern on this program, the public interest, is about saving lives. What we need, in my view, is a comprehensive national road safety strategy, which is based on the collaboration of central government with regional administration, municipal administration, as well as the schools, non-governmental organizations, and drivers associations. This is what we need. There has to be consultation. Just sitting on high and launching a so-called operation without the collaboration of neighborhood democratic councils, village councils, municipal councils, we are unlikely to bring about a change in this situation. It is no point launching an operation, save this or save that. What we need is the actual involvement of people on the ground, school teachers, village leaders, and regional officials. We need better designed roads. Originally, the roads were village public roads. They were not designed to take the volume of traffic, and they were not designed to take the high-speed traffic that they're now being subjected to. And we need safer vehicles. And also, we need to ensure that the administration of the Ghana Police Force Traffic Department is stable. We've been changing traffic chiefs too frequently, much too frequently. And we need somebody who is good but steady and remains there to see the plan through. There is, or there has been, a road safety strategy. It was developed years ago in 2013 in collaboration with the Pan American Health Organization and World Health Organization, but it has lapsed. It was developed in 2013 and it lasted until 2020. And this was meant to coincide with the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety. So it is nothing new. It is part of a global campaign. It's nothing unique to Guyana. We piggybacked on the pillars of an international campaign, the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety, 2011 to 2020. But now that has expired. We need something new. Uh, we need also to look again at road safety management. The traffic department must ensure that their bus stops and buses must stop at bus stops, not where they like. Buses must stop at bus stops so other road users know where the buses are likely to stop, and perhaps there's some area that is clearly designated. And we must stop many buses and other public transport vehicles from stopping wherever they like and becoming a hazard. For example, we need proper laybys by schools. We need newly repaired or resurfaced routes correctly marked. We need signs which can be easily seen. We need pavements for uh, pedestrians to use, particularly in congested areas, so they don't have to walk onto the roadways. We need pedestrian crossings so that so that aged people or young people on their own could get across the busy uh, roadways. Sidewalks must be clearly demarcated so that pedestrians can move safely from street to street. We need road safety education in our schools and also for drivers, who are, of course, the culprits. And I think there needs to be some form of driving school so that persons who wish to become drivers, particularly transporting passengers, must be qualified to carry passengers. This happens in the airline business. People who want to fly the plane by themselves could have a one type of license, but people who are flying others in their planes on a commercial basis must have a commercial pilot's license. Similarly, they must have a commercial driving license if they have to drive passengers, and perhaps that would rule out those who are reckless. So that there are lots of things that could be done at the managerial level, at the level of the driving environment, at the educational level, and of course, it must involve persons in the regions, in the municipalities. This is not a one government show. This is a multifaceted task force where everybody in the region, in the district, in the neighborhood, in the schools could come together to make our roads safe for our children. My friends, the right to life is paramount. And our constitution, the Charter of Civil Society, the Caribbean Charter for Civil Society, guarantees a person's right to life, liberty, and the security of the person. The state has an obligation to protect citizens' right to use roadways safely. Human safety on the roads is paramount. It is urgent. It's an everyday social issue, but it is under severe threat. Much more needs to be done to make our roads safe, to ensure that our children could travel without risk of death or disability. Thank you. May God bless our children, and may our roads become safer than they are at present.
Let us cooperate for the younger. Let us cooperate for our land. Let us resolve to fight together. See we do it right together. Can we do it? Yes, we can.
Each man must do